My wife's lover shot me 3 times and left me for dead, but I was wearing my bulletproof vest, and that betrayal cut deeper than any bullet rooted in her family's long-standing disdain for my immigrant roots, seeing me as the working-class outsider who never truly belonged in their elite world. At 68, I'd built an empire from the ashes of my past, but to them, my success was just a facade hiding my inferior origins. I stood in my private workshop, adjusting the final calibration on what would become my masterpiece, a body armor prototype capable of stopping 50 caliber rounds. I'd built an empire from nothing, transforming from a brilliant MIT engineering graduate into the founder of Kramer Defense Technologies, a company that supplied cutting-edge military equipment to governments worldwide. My calloused hands, scarred from decades of metalwork and experimentation, moved with practiced precision over the Kevlar titanium composite. I wasn't just an inventor. I was a perfectionist who tested every piece of equipment myself. My motto had always been simple: if I wouldn't trust it with my life, no soldier should. The workshop occupied the entire basement of my sprawling estate in the hills outside Denver. Rows of prototypes lined the walls, weapons armor, surveillance equipment, each representing millions in potential contracts. But my true passion lay in defensive technologies. Having lost my father, a Marine sergeant, to an IED in Vietnam, when I was just 16, I dedicated my life to keeping soldiers alive. Still working, darling. The voice belonged to my wife of 20 years, Natasha. She descended the stairs with a fluid grace that had first caught my attention at a Defense Department gala 2 decades ago. She remained stunning, with dark hair framing piercing green eyes and a smile that could disarm a room full of generals. She'd been a Pentagon liaison then, brilliant in her own right, with a master's degree in international relations. Almost finished, I replied, not looking up from my work. Our marriage had grown distant over the past 10 years, but I attributed it to my obsessive work schedule and her demanding job at the State Department. Yet deep down, I knew the rift stemmed from her family's old prejudices. My parents had immigrated from Eastern Europe, working-class survivors of hardship, while Natasha came from old-money American aristocracy that viewed me as beneath their station, no matter my success. This could revolutionize personal protection for our special forces, I said. Natasha approached, running her finger along the armored surface. You always were too focused on saving people, Alex. Sometimes I wonder if you care more about your soldiers than your own wife. I finally looked up, studying her face. Something in her tone felt off, but I pushed the thought aside. You know that's not true. Everything I do for us, for our future. Our future, she repeated, her voice carrying an odd inflection. Yes, I suppose it is all about that, isn't it? Before I could respond, footsteps echoed from upstairs, heavy, unfamiliar. My military training kicked in. I recognized the cadence of tactical boots. Expecting someone, I asked. Natasha's smile widened, but it wasn't the warm expression I remembered. You could say that, Alex. I'd like you to meet Troy Devine. The man who descended the stairs was everything I wasn't: 55, 6'4", built like a linebacker even in middle age, with the predatory grace of someone comfortable with violence. Troy wore expensive clothes that couldn't quite hide the bulge of a shoulder holster, and his cold blue eyes swept the workshop with professional assessment. Mr. Kramer, Troy said, his voice carrying a slight southern drawl. I've heard so much about you. My instinct screamed danger. My hand moved almost imperceptibly toward the workbench, where I kept a Glock 19, but Troy was faster. I wouldn't, Troy said, producing a .45 caliber pistol with smooth efficiency. Before we continue, let us know where in the world you are watching from. Now let's continue with today's story. 6 months earlier, my wife Natasha had been a woman torn between the facade of our long marriage and the desires she'd buried deep inside. I'd come to learn all this later, piecing it together from the fragments of her betrayal. But even then, I could feel the distance growing, like a silent crack in the foundation of our home. Our marriage, built over 20 years on what I thought was mutual respect and shared ambition, had withered into a routine that suffocated her. While I lost myself in my inventions driven by the ghosts of my immigrant parents' sacrifices, And my father's death in Vietnam, she found herself increasingly isolated in our sprawling estate. The scent of polished wood and distant pine from the Denver hills couldn't mask the emptiness. She felt the way our conversations had dwindled to mere logistics, bills, schedules, and the occasional forced dinner, where her family's old prejudices hung in the air like unspoken accusations. Natasha felt her life slipping away one bureaucratic day at a time. Her job at the State Department, once a thrill of coordinating defense contracts and managing international ties, now felt like a gilded cage where she was the smartest in the room, but rarely the one calling the shots. The weight of our 20-year union pressed on her. I'd risen from nothing, a son of Eastern European immigrants who'd scraped by in factories, but to her aristocratic family, I was forever the outsider, the upstart, whose success couldn't erase my humble bloodline. She'd internalized that disdain over the years, whispering it in subtle ways that chipped at my self-respect. That's when she met Troy Devine. He'd appeared at a classified briefing on weapons procurement, introduced as a security consultant with an impressive but vague resume. Troy had served in Delta Force during the later Iraq and Afghanistan tours, worked private security in those war zones, and now navigated the gray areas where government needs met ruthless private solutions. Their first conversation was professional, Natasha questioning the ethics of certain enhanced interrogation gear, her voice sharp with the authority she'd honed over decades. Troy impressed her not with brute force, but with a keen intellect that mirrored her own frustrations. He understood the moral complexities of modern warfare better than the generals, and as they spoke over coffee afterward, the air thick with the aroma of fresh brew and unspoken tension, she found herself drawn in. "You're not what I expected," she told him, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "What did you expect?" he replied with a genuine laugh. "A typical military contractor, all testosterone and no brain." "I leave the testosterone to younger men," Troy said, his eyes locking on hers. "I prefer strategy to brute force." What followed was 3 months of intellectual seduction. Troy listened to her rants about our marriage the way I'd become obsessed with my work, ignoring her needs, treating her like an accessory to my empire rather than a partner. He challenged her mind with discussions on power dynamics and freedom, things I'd long stopped sharing amid my endless prototypes. The physical affair ignited during a conference in Las Vegas, the neon lights and casino clamor drowning out her guilt. She convinced herself it was just an escape from a loveless routine, but Troy had grander designs. "Your husband is worth over $50 million, he murmured one evening in their hotel room. The sheets tangled around us. Though I didn't know it then, the faint scent of his cologne mingling with her perfume. "And you're essentially his secretary, trapped in that cage because of his immigrant stubbornness, always proving himself at your expense." "I'm not his secretary," Natasha protested, but her voice wavered. "Then what are you, a brilliant woman wasted on a man who cares more about metal and Kevlar than human connection, more about his rags to riches story than your heritage?" Troy had done his homework. He knew about my will, my life insurance, the business structure, where her name was on everything as a gesture of trust. But he also preyed on her family's biases, whispering how I'd tainted their bloodline with my working-class roots. "50 million could buy you real freedom." He continued, his hand tracing her arm. "Not this gilded cage where you're diminished by his obsessions." "Are you suggesting divorce?" she asked, her heart pounding. "I'm suggesting you think about what you truly want and what you're willing to do for it." The idea grew slowly in her mind like a poison ivy vine wrapping around our long marriage. At first, it was a fantasy dismissed in the light of day. But as I grew more absorbed in my work, our talks reduced to household drudgery. That fantasy morphed into necessity. Troy had connections, people who made problems vanish. He'd done it before. He confided wealthy spouses with inconvenient partners, always staged as accidents to avoid scrutiny. "Your husband's workshop is perfect," Troy explained during one of their secret planning sessions, the dim light of a motel room casting shadows on his face. Gas leak, electrical fire explosion, a tragic accident for the brilliant inventor, too focused on his legacy to notice danger. Natasha insisted on conditions. It had to be quick. She wouldn't let me suffer, and it had to be foolproof. She couldn't risk my surviving and uncovering their affair. "He's not stupid," she warned, her voice laced with a mix of fear and resentment. "Alexander is brilliant, and after 20 years, I know his paranoia runs deep, forged from his family's immigrant struggles. Men like him live in their heads," Troy assured her, his touch reassuring yet cold. "They don't see threats in their own homes, especially from a wife they've elevated despite her family's scorn. But Troy underestimated me." As autumn leaves crunched underfoot outside our estate, Natasha began studying me with new eyes. She noticed how my hand always hovered near a weapon around strangers, how my eyes tracked movements with the precision honed from military training I'd undergone young, how I tested every prototype obsessively as if proving my worth against the world that had dismissed my origins. "He's more dangerous than you think," she told Troy one afternoon, the chill wind rattling the windows. "Every man is dangerous until he's dead," Troy replied. "That's why we take no chances." Their plan was elegant in its simplicity. Troy would enter through the back while she distracted me in the workshop. A staged robbery gone wrong with security cameras showing an intruder and her as the traumatized widow. The workshop erupted in controlled chaos as I dove behind my workbench, the splintering wood from Troy's first shot echoing like thunder in the confined space. Adrenaline surged through my veins, sharpening my senses, the acrid smell of gunpowder mixing with the metallic tang of my prototypes. My body wasn't as agile as it once was, but the military training from my youth kicked in muscle memory, guiding me through the pain of old joints, protesting the sudden movement. Troy's second shot shattered a bank of monitors, showering sparks and glass that stung my skin like angry bees. "You're only making this harder on yourself, Kramer," Troy shouted, his voice steady as he advanced with the calm of a seasoned killer. "Come out and let's finish this clean." My mind raced, mapping the workshop's layout like a battlefield. Multiple exits, but Troy blocked the main stairs. The emergency tunnel I'd installed years ago, a paranoid holdover from my father's war stories and my own immigrant family's distrust of stability, might be my salvation. "Alex, please." Natasha called, her voice dripping with false concern that twisted like a knife in my gut. "Troy doesn't want to hurt you. Just come out and we can discuss this like adults." The hypocrisy burned. This woman who'd shared my bed for 20 years, who'd known my vulnerabilities born from a lifetime of proving myself against her family's scorn, had orchestrated my murder. Whatever love I'd clung to crystallized into cold hatred, fueling my resolve. "Discussion time is over," I called back, my hand closing around the prototype armor. In one fluid motion, I pulled the vest over my head, the magnetic clasp securing it like a second skin. The titanium Kevlar composite settled against my chest, heavy, but reassuring, personally tested, refined over decades of innovation. Troy rounded the workbench, edge pistol raised. I rolled left as he fired the bullet, ricocheting off a metal cabinet with a sharp ping. Grabbing a welding torch, I ignited the flame, the blue hiss cutting through the tension. "Clever," Troy admitted, keeping his distance. "But that torch has maybe a 3-foot range. This pistol considerably more." I maneuvered between equipment banks, the torch's heat warming my face as I kept him at bay, inching toward the emergency exit. Troy, ever the professional, cut off roads instead of hunting like he'd done in war zones. "You know what I don't understand," he said conversationally, his boots scraping concrete. "How a man smart enough to build military-grade gear could be stupid enough to trust a woman like Natasha." I paused behind testing equipment, the hum of machines masking my breathing. "What do you mean?" "She's been planning this for months. Every touch, every 'I love you' calculation. She's good at it. Picked me specifically, researched my background through State Department ties. Your wife is thorough." The words landed like blows, but I filed them away, strategy overriding emotion. The exit was 20 feet away, open ground, a risk. "The real genius," Troy continued, closer now, is the orchestration. Security guard off tonight, alarms malfunction this afternoon, and even the rain washes evidence. We planned around your immigrant paranoia, turns out it wasn't enough. This wasn't impulse. It was a precision operation making Troy deadlier than I'd assessed. The only thing I couldn't account for was your gear, he added. Impressive, almost want to keep you alive to demo it. I made my move, launching from cover with the torch blazing. Troy anticipated his pistol barking 3 times. The .45 caliber slugs slammed into my chest like sledgehammers, driving me back, the torch clattering away. Pain exploded, wind knocked out bruises forming under the armor, but no penetration. I collapsed, gasping, staring at the ceiling as they approached. 3 to the chest, Troy said, satisfied, checking my pulse with clinical detachment. He's done. Natasha stared down, her green eyes, cold blood pooling from superficial wounds I'd staged. Now we're rich. Troy holstered his weapon. Time for your grieving widow act. They left me there, footsteps fading upstairs. Thunder masking sounds. What they didn't know, I tested everything personally. The armor designed for 50 cal stopped 45 hollow points cold, the impacts bruising but survivable. I lay still for 10 minutes, breath steadying despite age's toll, listening to Natasha's panicked voice on the phone. Please hurry, break in, my husband. I think he's shot. Her acting was flawless, but it sealed my transformation. Jutoi training Quinsu Kajuptoi Yichin slowly, rolling, examining the bullets on the floor, their hollow points mangled but halted. Removing the vest, I inspected the impressions, perfect, no breach. A grim smile forming, I activated the emergency exit, slipping into the tunnel. Sirens wailed distantly as I emerged half a mile away into November rain, cold drops stinging like rebirth. The trusting husband died in that workshop, killed by betrayal, rooted in class disdain. What emerged was a predator, resourceful, trained with nothing to lose. Forged in my wife's cruelty and Troy's arrogance, I'd make them face the monster they'd created. 3 weeks after my supposed death, I sat in a rented warehouse in Cleveland's industrial district, the dim fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like distant thunder, casting long shadows across surveillance photos of my own funeral. The air was thick with the musty scent of rust and oil, a far cry from my Denver estate. But it grounded me, reminded me of the gritty factories where my immigrant parents had toiled to give me a start. The images showed Natasha in black, her tears convincing as she accepted condolences from business associates and officials, all oblivious that the man they mourned was very much alive, watching from the shadows. Troy stood beside her, playing the supportive friend, the security consultant who'd tried to save me but arrived too late. His restrained grief looked genuine, but I knew better. It fueled the cold fury simmering in my chest. I'd purchased the warehouse through a shell company, using hidden accounts Natasha never knew about, precautions born from a lifetime of her family's subtle digs at my origins. The place had become my new workshop, stocked with tools and screens that hummed softly, each one a weapon in my emerging strategy. My reflection in a dark monitor revealed a changed man, gaunt from stress and relentless focus. My beard now covering my jaw, gray strands dyed brown to alter my profile. But the real shift was in my eyes, once warm with trust, now cold, and calculating mirrors of the predator I'd become. The official investigation had played out as I'd hoped, evidence of a struggle, blood loss suggesting fatal injury, a trail vanishing into the wilderness amid storms. No body found, but with winter erasing traces, I was declared legally dead. My estate, valued at $52 million, swollen by years of savvy investments, passed to my loving widow. I'd spent those weeks not in rage-fueled vengeance, but in meticulous planning, not quick kills, but a sophisticated dismantling piece by piece, just as they tried to shatter my life. Strategy over emotion, that was the key to true justice. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts, the sound sharp against the warehouse's echo. I checked the security feeds, Gene Briggs as expected, then let him in. The chill night air rushed in with him, carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked asphalt. Jean, a former Delta Force operator who'd served under my father in Vietnam, studied me with a veteran's eye. "You look like hell, Alex." I managed a grim smile. "Feel worse. Thanks for coming." At his age, Jean was a veteran of multiple tours, his skills in surveillance and direct action undimmed. More than that, he was one of the few who'd known my father personally, sharing stories of jungle ambushes that had shaped my paranoia. "Still can't believe it?" he said, accepting the coffee I poured, its steam curling like smoke signals. "Natasha seemed decent." "That was her weapon," I replied, the bitterness sharp on my tongue. "I trusted her completely, shared accounts, codes, everything. She used it all against me, poisoned by her family's view of me as the unworthy outsider." I activated a display showing Troy's photo and record real name, Troy Davine, Delta Force alum, now a problem solver for hire. He's killed before wealthy spouses, dying suspiciously, him always nearby. Jean leaned in, eyes narrowing. "You think she knew?" "She's no fool. Chose him because he could do what she couldn't, eliminate the immigrant stain on her legacy." "So the plan?" Jean asked, sensing the depth of my strategy. I smiled without warmth. "Total destruction. Take apart their lives systematically. Finances, trust, security, then death." The words hung heavy, but Jean didn't flinch. "You sure this path?" "Mom, they left me bleeding." Jean stood over me, discussing their riches while I died. "Any mercy died with that old version of me." He nodded slowly. "What do you need?" I pulled up displays, floor plans, photos. They think they're safe, enjoying my fortune in a downtown penthouse. Phase 1 surveillance. Routines, weaknesses, they're dynamic. I'm betting greed turns them against each other. "How long have you been at this?" "Since pulling those bullets from my armor." Jean saw it, then the new me, a predator with resources and resolve. "When do we start?" I turned to the screens, already mapping the next moves. "We already have. They just don't know it yet." The abandoned church on Detroit's outskirts stood like a forgotten sentinel under the moonless sky, its crumbling stone walls whispering secrets of decay. As I arrived early, the gravel crunching under my tires like brittle bones. I'd chosen it strategically remote for privacy, yet with multiple escape routes and clear sightlines in every direction, a nod to the paranoia that had saved my life. The chill wind carried the faint scent of rust and old wood, stirring memories of hidden meetings from my father's Vietnam tales, where trust was earned in shadows. This gathering would test that, assembling a team to turn my solitary revenge into a symphony of destruction. Jean arrived first, his headlights cutting through the darkness like probing eyes, followed 10 minutes later by two figures moving with the fluid grace of lifelong operators. I watched from the shadows as they took defensive positions inside the church, their instincts sharp despite the years. Ray Shelton behind the altar, his weathered face grim under the faint glow of a flashlight. Willie Casey nearer the door, coiled like a spring ready to unleash. Ray, a Marine Force recon veteran who'd lost an eye in Fallujah, clasped my hand firmly. "Alex, Jean said you were dead." "I was." I replied, the words heavy with the emotional void left by betrayal. "Now I'm something else." Willie approached warily, his smaller frame radiating tension honed from Navy SEAL days turned dark. "This better be worth it, Kramer. I don't do favors." I smiled coldly, activating a portable projector that bathed the wall in images of Troy and Natasha, the light flickering like accusatory flames. "This isn't charity, it's profitable business." The photos captured their smug comfort, igniting a fresh wave of fury in my chest, the betrayal's sting as raw as the bruises still fading from those bullets. These two tried to erase me for my fortune, exploiting prejudices against my roots. I'm proving them wrong. Ray studied the images professionally. "The woman's your wife. Was, now a target." I pulled up Troy's record, Delta Force background kills disguised as accidents. "He's good," put 3 in my chest and walked away. "But you're here," Ray observed. "That's their first mistake." I changed projections to plans and finances. Gentlemen, 5 million each to dismantle them. The silence was profound, the offer hanging like incense in the dusty air. Catch, Willie asked suspiciously. Requirements months-long op for total ruin, not quick hits. Illegal, no doubt. And at the end, they die. Ray leaned against a pew. Justice, you mean? They tried murdering me for money poisoned by class disdain. I returned the favor. Gene stepped forward. Evidence shows they're monsters. Willie eyed the projections. You can afford it. Death unlocked hidden assets, foreign account shells, richer than dead alive. Ray paced, studying my timeline. Sophisticated military grade. Break them first. Exactly. Phase 1 surveillance routines, weaknesses. We know they're cozy but unstable. Though age had tempered us, all and our skills remained sharp from experience, old but deadly, like retired Delta and SEALs who never truly fade. Phase 2, psychological warfare, harass, subtly breed paranoia and distrust. Ray nodded. Divide and conquer. Troy's greedy killer. Natasha's manipulative volatile. Pressure cracks them. Footage showed their stress, her drinking his control. Phase 3, financial ruin, freeze accounts, tank investments. Willie looked impressed. Phase 4, reveal. I'm alive, watch them shatter. Ray whistled. Hell of a twist. By then they've lost everything. Phase 5, permanent justice. And I faced them. This isn't just revenge, it's art. They thought betrayal had no cost. Prove otherwise. Gene committed first. In. Your father deserved better. Ray followed, and count me. Skills need purpose. Willie grinned. 5 million plus expenses. Done. The team assembled 3 deadly veterans united. As they melted into the night, I lingered in the church's hush, the weight of strategy settling like resolve. From my surveillance van 3 blocks away, I watched the feeds with a grim satisfaction. The screen's glow illuminating the dim interior like a command center in some forgotten war. Phase 2 had begun psychological warfare, subtle strikes designed to erode their sanity without a trace back to me. The first hit came at pre-dawn in their downtown penthouse, the city's distant hum filtering through my headphones as Natasha bolted upright in bed, her heart racing. I could almost feel the jolt myself, the echo of my own betrayal sharpening my focus. Troy rolled out with a pistol in hand, his movements efficient despite middle age, whispering for her to stay put. She crept to the window anyway, the neon lights below sparkling innocently. He returned minutes later, face grim. Brick through the kitchen window, no entry, nothing stolen. The message tied to it, words clipped from magazines. You can't hide from the truth. Natasha sank onto the bed, hands trembling. Random prank? At 20 floors up, unlikely. It was the 3rd incident in 2 weeks, telephoto, intimate photos, mailed anonymously, capturing moments that twisted my stomach even now. Troy's apartment ransacked but untouched valuables. Paranoia was setting in just as planned, small seeds of doubt blooming into fear. Why us? She whispered, wrapping her robe tighter, the luxury silk a mockery of their stolen comfort. Troy's laugh was harsh, echoing in my ears. Tell police we're harassed by someone who knows we murdered No. She flinched at the word guilt, etching lines on her face. Guilt I'd once ignored, blinded by love. She was drinking more the empty wine glasses on nightstands, a telltale sign in my feeds. I never wanted him to suffer, she murmured, voice cracking. Troy's eyes hardened. You wanted him dead. Methods irrelevant. He was just an obstacle, your family's immigrant mistake. Stop, she snapped, but he pressed no other way for that 50 million. She hugged herself, jumping at every shadow. Feels like we're watched constantly. The harassment escalated strategically, wrong number calls at odd hours, unordered deliveries piling up, credit charges reversed mysteriously. Each a coincidence alone, but together a pattern, screaming pursuit. Troy's phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. 3 bullets to the chest. He's finished. Now we are rich." His face paled, the exact words from that night hitting like echoes from the grave. "Someone listened," she whispered, the room's air growing thick with terror. He swept for bugs furiously but found nothing. My tech was undetectable, planted during phase 1. Another text, a grainy photo of them over my body in the workshop, damning evidence. Troy's hands shook, deleting it. "We leave now. We're somewhere safe while I hunt this ghost." He packed weapons amid Chloe's aggression mounting in his tense shoulders. "If they have proof, they're dead, just like Alexander." The chill in his voice deepened to her fear. She'd traded my predictability for his volatility, a strategic misstep I'd exploit. As they fled the penthouse, smashing his phone in rage. "Whoever you are, last mistake," I leaned back, a cold smile forming. Phase 2 was unfolding perfectly. Fear-breeding mistakes, trust fracturing under pressure. They'd run, but my web was tightening. The safe house Troy chose was a remote cabin in the Colorado mountains, 40 miles from civilization. The winding dirt roads slick with fresh snow that crunched under tires like fragile illusions shattering. I monitored from a far feed showing Natasha at the window, her silhouette tense against the falling flakes, the isolation amplifying their paranoia, a strategic choice on my part, pushing them to a pressure cooker where cracks would show. 3 days and her thoughts turned inward, the cabin's pine scent heavy with regret, while Troy cleaning weapons at the table, his movements sharp and mechanical. "Any leads from contacts?" she asked, voice edged with desperation. "Working on it," he replied without looking up, but his grim tone betrayed leads pointing to professional inquiries, my doing through Jean's FBI ties. "Someone with resources is digging." Her stomach nodded visibly on camera. "Law enforcement. Know something private tied to my connections they'd underestimated." The satellite phone rang, jolting them both, the shrill mounting, slicing the silence like a warning. Troy answered cautiously, his face whitening. "Inquiries on Alexander's death files, forensics." He hung, fear flickering in his eyes for the first time. "Government clearance level. Your husband had allies, we missed military ties from his rags to riches climb." She sank into a chair, the full weight crashing down. I'd been no isolated inventor, but networked through contracts, her family's disdain blinding them to my reach. The phone rang again. Voicemail, this time a distorted voice filling the room. "You killed the wrong man. Powerful friends know." Troy grabbed his weapon instinctively. "We leave now. If they're connected, no extradition spots, new IDs for a price." He packed urgently, but as if cued lights died, plunging them into darkness, a moonlight filtering through snow-laced windows like ghostly accusations. Troy peered into the forest, pistol drawn. "They're out there." Silence stretched, broken by wind howling through pines. Then an approaching vehicle, my team's truck positioned for encirclement. Doors slammed, voices carried, "Come out, we have questions about Kramer's death." Troy recognized the tactical, spread professional surrounding with efficiency. "Who are you?" he shouted. "His friends." Laughter echoed. "Good story on the home invasion, too bad we know better." A spotlight blazed, blinding him. He fired wildly, shots sparking off the light, diving attackers. Response was overwhelming. Automatic fire shattered windows, glass, raining like shattered truss splinters, biting skin. Troy rolled bullets, chewing walls, Natasha screaming from the bedroom. He crawled back, gunfire from all sides, yelling for her to escape the window. But the room was empty, open panes streaming cold air. She'd fled into the trees. Relief-fleeting silence fell, then the door exploded inward, tactical lights sweeping. Troy knew the layout, slipping to the basement trapdoor tunnel to the root cellar, my plan accounting for it. Emerging outside, a rifle muzzle pressed his neck. "Troy Davine, we meet again." I stood in moonlight, lean from determination, assault rifle casual in my grip. "Impossible," he whispered. "Prototype armor works against 45s. The reality hit him like those bullets had me, alive all along. Watching you enjoy my stolen fortune, my voice was steady rage controlled. 50 million what my life was worth tainted by her family's prejudice. His hand twitched for his sidearm. My rifle butt dropped him to his knees. Wouldn't. My team's got you surrounded. From the forest, Natasha screamed, my men escorting her zip-tied. Her face paled seeing me. Hello, darling. Miss me. Forced to my knees in snow, I circled slowly, savoring the strategic payoff. Impressive plan, but one flaw, assuming I trusted you fully. I'd suspected months ago calls, absences, finance interest, her family's whispers fueling doubt. You knew, she gasped. Suspected. Took precautions, hidden assets. Voice colder. Didn't expect murder from my wife. Troy-eyed escapes, but my team blocked every path, military-style op flawless. What now? Kill us. Eventually, first experience, my destruction, everything you cherish, gone. Gesturing, my men moved to vehicles. Harassment was nothing. Real pain starts now. Leaning to Natasha, I loved you, elevated you despite your family's scorn. Choose greed over loyalty, learn the cost. Convoy pulled from the burning cabin, they separated toward their fates, making their plot seem merciful. The warehouse I'd modified for this purpose loomed like a tomb in Detroit's forgotten industrial sprawl, its soundproof walls absorbing screams as effectively as my armor had bullets, the air thick with the sterile chill of controlled ventilation, and no windows to let in mercy. Troy and Natasha were secured in separate rooms, chained to chairs facing a one-way mirror that let them witness each other's unraveling psychological precision, turning their bond into a weapon against them. My voice echoed through speakers, calm and unyielding. Welcome to your new home. You'll be here a while, hope it's comfortable. Through the mirror, I watched Troy strain against restraints, his face a mask of defiance masking fear, while Natasha's terror etched every line of her body, mascara streaking like black tears. The setup was strategic, break them mentally, first using truths as scalpels. What do you want? Troy shouted, veins bulging. I remained composed, the observation room's monitors humming softly. Understanding Troy, you saw me as a soft target, a rich civilian unprepared for violence, diminished by my immigrant roots. Screens flickered to life in both rooms, replaying workshop footage. His shots, my fall, their casual departure. But I'm the one who designs death's tools. I continued the footage, revealing me donning the armor pre-confrontation. You were doomed from entry. I knew Natasha's game, her guilt broadcasting like a signal for weeks, amplified by her family's prejudices. Her desperate plea crackled through. Alex, I'm sorry, I never meant. You did. I cut in the words, slicing deep into my own scars. Not the bullets, those bruised. You destroyed 20 years of vows in sickness, in health, richer or poorer till death. Choose greed instead. Gene entered with updates. Transfers complete, 52 million redistributed to veterans' charities. I nodded, eyes on monitors. They're broke. Troy tested chains, futilely seeking weaknesses, professional but futile against my designs. Wasting time, I broadcast. Those restraints, my creation, unbreakable. He glared at the camera. Kill us then. I enjoy the process. New screens showed live feeds, his sister's house, his mother's apartment, nephew's dorm. Recognize these, researched you like you did me, family friends. Leave them out, he snarled, panic cracking his facade. They had nothing. Neither did I, but that didn't stop you. They're safe if you cooperate, shifting to Natasha. Remember our vows 20 years ago? I built us everything, defying your family's scorn. She sobbed, chains rattling. I never stopped loving. Stop lying. Ray brought intel reports. Backgrounds done, interesting secrets. I revealed Natasha Troy's married 3 times, wives, dead mysteriously, fires, accidents, always insurance windfalls. You weren't first. Her gasp echoed. Troy's expression turned murderous. And Troy and Natasha skimmed State Department funds for 10 years, selling secrets, preparing betrayal longer than you knew. The revelations hit like grenades, Troy staring through the mirror with dawning hatred, Natasha crumbling under mutual deception. Sociopaths think you had found perfection romantic. Willie signaled, phase 4 ready. Gentlemen, final lesson time. Lights dimmed, equipment descending, monitors for prolonged torment. Murder was your attempt. Justice is this betrayal's echo, slow and unrelenting. I approach the door, resolve steel. Break you piece by piece, till you beg death, then deny it. Troy broke first, his higher mileage from years wearing him down, isolation and family threats shattering his shell. Natasha held longer, but her collapse was total, begging forgiveness from the man she doomed. 3 months later, the warehouse stood empty, haunted only by echoes of regret and the faint, lingering scent of fear that clung to the air like a shroud. I stood in the room where Troy and Natasha had spent their final weeks, the silence profound, broken only by the distant hum of the city reclaiming its forgotten spaces. The details of those days remain mine alone, methodical unraveling, secrets laid bare, relationships shattered until they begged not for life, but for an end to the torment. Troy broke first, his facade crumbling under the weight of isolation and threats to his family, while Natasha's collapse was utter, her pleas for forgiveness ringing hollow against the betrayal she'd orchestrated. They'd made their choice that night in my workshop, and what followed was the inexorable consequence, a darker justice than my father, the Vietnam vet who'd believed in proper channels, would have endorsed. 3 months ago, the trusting husband had died there, slain by greed and prejudice. What emerged was forged in fire, unyielding. No bodies to find, I crafted a false trail, passport stamps, transactions of footage of lookalikes fleeing to South America as fugitives with stolen funds. If anyone searched, they'd uncover criminals vanishing into exile. The money, every dollar of my $52 million they'd claimed, was redistributed to military charities and veterans organizations. Their greed alchemized into good, a symbolic rebirth from the ashes of deceit. As I walked away, a strange peace settled over me. Not forgiveness, but the cold satisfaction of reclaimed self-respect. They taught me trust was a vulnerability. I'd learned justice could liberate. Yet even in peace, I felt the predator stir, ready for whatever betrayal came next. What shadows would it cast on my soul? 5 years later, I sat in my new office, overlooking the Denver skyline, the sun glinting off glass towers like beacons of a future I'd rebuilt. Kramer Defense Technologies had expanded beyond my wildest visions, employing thousands, securing contracts worth billions, proof that from betrayal's ruins, true freedom could rise. At 73, I was leaner, wiser, the predator hidden beneath a veneer of success, watching, waiting. The trusting man was long gone, but in his place stood someone unbreakable, a guardian against those who preyed on loyalty. Justice had become my business, and as my assistant announced a visitor, a woman with tales of her husband's deceit, I smiled, the same cold expression that had sealed Troy and Natasha's fate. Send her in. In a world rife with hidden knives, I was the blade that cut back free, unburdened eyes on a brighter horizon. Betrayal demands not surrender, but transformation. I'd emerge stronger, a symbol of resilience rising like a phoenix from the storm. And there you have it, another tale of sweet revenge, reminding us that self-respect is the ultimate armor. If this story inspired you to set boundaries and reclaim your power, hit that like button, subscribe for more empowering stories, and drop a comment below, sharing your thoughts or your own experiences. We're building a community of strength here. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. What's your takeaway? Let me know. Your story could be the spark for someone else.